The Religion of Islam, a Standard Book 2, seems like a weekend school sort of text. So Volume 1 would have been more of an overview. Volume 2 would be towards enabling people to practice the general scope of the religion. I think we can teach the prayer without graven images in books like these. Now, you can have people with pictures, and these photographs, well, they can be edited to only show enough detail as is necessary to illustrate the position. Of course, Islam is based around Al-Quran. And Al-Quran is like poem and story, but it's kind of outside the Arabic terms for poetry and prose. It's as a category all its own. Now people say, well, in English, but the term poetry in Arabic implies that there's something extra going on for style, and every single letter or vowel has an effect on the meaning in Al-Quran. For those who say that Islam brought war and all that other stuff, Islam pretty much canceled out almost every sort of battle that a person could take part in. The 43 Ghazawat expeditions, not all of them were battles, but the tradition presents 1,500 or so battles that took place before that amongst other people among the Arabs. So it's not like they were stirred up to war. They were already at war. It just, kept where it was. And Islam taught the people not to fight for land or to capture slaves or to gain in other sorts of resources, and not to force people into conversion. Translations may cause some word association issues. So if you have an issue, it may not be the text that you're referring to when it comes to revelation and inspiration. That's something important to keep in mind, as much as the translators and presenters may intend to do their best. Something that came across to you may not be there. We're supposed to be sincere and mean our prayers. And the prayer itself is a conveyal of the revelation and inspiration. The first chapter of Al-Quran is said. People do like to say stuff like they seek the good in this world and protection in this world, but also the hereafter. Like, for example, when it comes to dying in battle, are in God's cause, regardless of the thing. Certainly those who are persecuted die in God's cause. If they're persecuted for doing something right, or if they do something right and die as a result, people say it's like you'll live longer. You don't know that you'll live longer. You could have died because you didn't go off and do such and such that night, and therefore you face some other encounter and that led to your death, but you died doing the right thing, so therefore so you seek refuge from dying doing something wrong is the point, whether fleeing or something that you actually commit. And the prayer becomes something that you can do of whatever job you are. You just take your couple-minute break, say your prayer, get back to work. If you want to say a longer prayer, you can when that time's available. And it's simple enough that, you can go anywhere in the world and people will understand how to say the prayer. Even retarded people will end up learning how to say the prayer. The prayer call, you may not be able to, yell it out for all your fellow workers to hear, but certainly the person next to you, if you're having somebody join you, when you step off into your corner or, step outside the main factory doors and, or wherever your place to do it is, it all becomes something that, you can do. And it reminds you outside of your life when you have these evening, dusk, dawn, early afternoon, late afternoon prayers. And if you mean it, there are things said. Like even the going over of Quran. Some areas will hold extra prayer services during Ramadan. And some areas, in addition to that, will have a time in the afternoon or the evening over people eating or something maybe, that where they actually explain where, what's going to be said that night. Like in between the evening and the dusk prayers, people will, some places, that's the time where, they'll give people time to eat, but they'll try to go over an idea of what's going to be gone over or what had been gone over the previous night as far as the Quran reading and the extra prayers. But I say extra because these are not obliged prayers. These are ones that one can say all the time, not just Ramadan. Something that this book brings up that I don't remember in the prayer book that I brought up is that people will do a full bath after the funeral preparations. So the person who prepares the body, or the people who do that, will take a full bath of themselves, not just the corpse. Separately, of course. This book does not have Arabic as far as I can recall and see thus far, but it has a lot of transliterations, and you may want to practice with that until you get access to somebody that can confirm your pronunciation or hear their pronunciations online. In difficult times, there can be extra standing portions with the prayer. And, at the end of the prayer, you bow and then you rise up into supplication, and then you go down to prostrate. Instead of the Sami Allahu liman hamidah wa rabbana lakal hamd, you lift up towards a supplicating position, and you, hands together, and you supplicate. And, hands together as in the edges of your hands, not the folding of fingers like those who curse, not the interlacing of fingers like those who curse themselves or hide things from others or themselves. It's, the cupping of the hands. There's required alms that varies per the type of wealth that you have. There's the 40th once a year. There's the end of Ramadan. I don't know, something like the equivalent of a 5-pound bag of flour. It shouldn't be bleached flour. It should be healthy flour, or grain or fruit or nuts or cheese or whatever you have. That's, just pure food stuff. And, there's the thing about the land. If you find something within your own grounds, as far as digging or whatever, there's not the automatic requirement that if you have a mine somewhere else other than your homestead, which then it would be a fifth, about 80 grams, or I don't know how to otherwise describe it. I think, the amount of gold or silver that you have to have is like something like that, or Now, the amount of silver has also been compared to about 20 ounces or that sort of thing. So there's been different opinions on what the minimal amount of that is. But that's just like stamped coin, which is backed by, the sense of what it is in that country. It's a 40th of that. As far as the lands, it's a 10th of stuff that's not irrigated. Now, if it's merchandise, it's 10 times the merchandise. So if there's 200 coins that are about an ounce worth of silver or something worth of merchandise that you've amassed to sell, then the zakat is due on that. So as far as merchandise, just figure it's about 10 times as much versus what you just have as property. And food too, it's a lot of food, like 1,800 pounds or even 800 kilograms you have aside. So even if you have a year's supply of food, I don't think you have to pay zakat on it. It's when you have more than that. There's rules on, the size, age, number of animals, and how much you might have to pay for that. And I don't think technically size is included because, this animal's a little bit bigger than that animal, so I don't recall anything like that. But there is stuff like this. And zakat is different than sadaqah. Sadaqah is charity that can go towards any good cause. Zakat only goes towards the Muslimin. Primarily, you can give zakat to your family if the family needs it, but preferably you should take care of your family with other money. But the zakat goes towards the needy. It's not towards places of worship or anything like that. It's just straight up for the needy. And one of the things that general charity can go towards is the administrative costs. Nowadays, a lot of charities are figuring out how to pay for their administrative costs without charging extra to the people who are donating or taking a direct cut of that. The state is not to consider the zakat of their state tax. That's something different if they decide to do that. And of course, they're limited. In Islam, we're going to tell them, hey, you need to be fair with this tax that you're charging, dude. You need to be fair. And one of the things that we're going to run across with things like that is that some countries even Ramadan's the best time to take it, so we're going to take a chunk of everybody's bank account. Well, that could be less than the actual stuff that's due from some of those people, and is more likely to be more than what's due from other people. Now, you don't squander your wealth to the point where I never have the amount around that's required, because some people say, well, it's like $8,000 of gold, and if you have less than $8,000 in the bank, it's not obliged. But other definitions would put you closer, like $400 or $500. So you should give a 40th of that. And it's better to be safe than sorry with that. So when one's not sure, you just want to be sure that you have given the right amount. And you don't just heedlessly give and you're not even sure if you paid it or not. You should be sure that you've paid your zakat. But the state only supervises it if they're going to do that. So if somebody finds a zakat-worthy cause, then the state, fighting over these people took care of their zakat on their own, or they decided it's not going to go towards the state fund, it's not the business of the state to get involved, regardless of what you've read in some of the narratives about some of the fighting and imprisoning and stuff that has happened by so-called Muslim majorities. Sanity and freedom is required for every form of zakat. Same thing with sadaqah. Sadaqah requires some freedom. As much as there could be people sent out to collect it, to encourage it, it's still a choice. And yes, jewelry is considered towards too. If there's precious stones, precious metals, even lower end precious metals like silver, still if the amount is reached, then fasting from food, drink, and the wetness causing sexual activity from dawn, which is on average an hour and a half before sunrise, to sunset. It's not about self-torture. And it's a practice that will give a person some ability outside of Ramadan to control oneself. Because if you can hold back, oh, this isn't lawful, this isn't wholesome, I can wait till I get home, you'll save money, you'll save some of your health, etc., etc. Fasting is not a thing towards hurting one's health. And, so much of it is just some mental thing. And honestly, our ancestors waited all the time. They didn't just chow down wherever and, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika lak, labbaik innal hamda wa ni'mata lak, wal mulku lak, la sharika lak. I stand for your service, all divinity. I'm standing up, there's no partner with you, no partner in divinity. Certainly, yours is the praise, the blessing of the kingdom. There's no partner with you, is one of the things that you say on the pilgrimage. And there's other things that you can say on the pilgrimage, other things that you should say on the pilgrimage, but all who are physically and financially capable, and of course mentally capable, have an obligation once in their life to make the pilgrimage to Mecca. Now, the vast majority of people in any area, including in richer countries like America, it's not going to be required on them ever. But this is something that people will save up for years and years. So it's not like, oh, I can't afford it every year, so therefore it's never required on me. No, you really should probably save up a little bit each year, and maybe over a decade or two you can pay for it. And also, if you end up with a need that has to be fulfilled, then that can be taken care of. So again, most people even doing that will not be able to, but it's something to work towards. And there's certain things on the pilgrimage, walking between, circumambulations, collecting and throwing stones, and then finally the sacrifice and the cutting of the hair, or the shaving of the head. And there's symbolic import with that, but one of the main things is you just want to get into the mode where you are willing to serve God. Marriage is preferably based on character, religious soundness. Now, you can have a religiously sound marriage based on the terms set forth, witnesses, a guardian testifying that it's in the woman's interest and she really actually consents to the whole thing, that she is of age and of mental ability to choose for herself. Of course, there's allowances that may not be as easy to explain for the mentally ill to get married. And certainly, again, the guardian situation with that. And by that, I don't mean the common sociopath, immature individual that you, 30's the new 12? Is that what they're saying? Stuff like that. But, people who are actually of the mental stage where they could be accountable for what they have. So that's determined before the finalization of a marriage. And people do arrange marriages, but the final decision lies in the actual people in the marriage. Both the behavior to finalize it and their decision at that point is the financial side of the obligation. Here's the trust the woman receives, and does she consider that good enough? The stuff where you hear, oh, somebody gave some kids some toys, and that has nothing to do with the Islamic vision of marriage. Thank you very much. If the marriage was arranged beforehand, somebody who got older and decided, okay, here's the time to finalize the marriage, they would have different conditions than somebody, you know. And again, we have, Quranic things laid down that point out that these Western fantasies about Islamic child marriage don't pan out. Surah 4, and, if you read 60 for itself, Now, you can see the face of the bride before the marriage, but these people that have tried to take it further, it's like, no, you're not peeking at a leg or whatever. If there's any health issue that you might not be able to figure out through modest clothing, the family can tell you about it, and it becomes a grounds for annulling the marriage on their fault if they don't tell you about some scars or some disability or something that's being hidden, right? Or, if the woman's purely setting this up for herself, then again, it's her responsibility. And if it's found out after the marriage, then, the fault lies on her. So things can be settled without, and of course, there's things set up for divorce. The civil side, everybody leaves with their own property. So none of this cheating thing. Somebody shows up and marries somebody, and man or woman, and then they can take half the property because they were able to get divorced. And some of the prohibitions in regards to who you can never marry are not as go figure for some people, right? And some of the things not as definitely mentioned, like people that your parents used to marry, and it's like, because there's one of the most common alternative fantasies that people have, allegedly. I'm not sure the veracity of the statistical claims, but one of the things that people say is the whole step thing. And it's like, well, again, if you've nursed from the same woman, or if, it's somebody that your parents were married to, you don't marry them afterwards. That's, and people say, well, biologically, it's not. It's like, but yeah. And some of the other stuff too. In America, there at least were places where some of the a bit too close relations were ones that you could marry. And some places allowed, until recently, the fornication, but not the marriage. And it's like, so you can't take what just your society says and say, well, this is right and wrong. And so based around marriage, there's some rights of inheritance, and the family that results further indicates part of why marriage is talked about as half of the religion. When it comes to the business outside of such things, you already know some of the rules by knowing about that, and so much of that is laid down. Like for like, complete honesty about the thing, ability to recall the transaction if something is noticed that was not noticed. Of course, there should be full light and other such things. The people who bury the bad food under the good food, and then people scoop up, and I've even seen that at main grocery stores. They will flip over tomatoes and stuff to hide the bad spots, and so people will scoop up some of the bad tomatoes with the good ones and some other foods. I've seen it less with some stores than others, but yeah, I've definitely witnessed some stuff that's not right. And perhaps it's legal in my country to do deceitful things like that. Certainly the packaging is deceitful often enough. The criminal penalties are not as severe as people realize. Yes, there's death penalties. Yes, there's violent penalties, but they tend not to go as far as people may think. And let us again distinguish between a Muslim majority, a Muslim ruler, and what is actually the Islamic law, the Sharia law. The Sharia in general can be almost anything, but Sharia law is directly what the revelation and inspiration has set forth. And there's not supposed to be an increasing or decreasing of the penalties. And some people, like after Muhammad died, some people decided that, well, if you get caught repeatedly, we'll just kill you. It's like, no, if the thing is whoop them, tell them not to do it, and let them free. If they get caught a few times, it doesn't mean you kill them. When it comes to stealing and finding, things are different depending on what they are. Certainly, some perishable food left on the sidewalk, no one in sight, the idea that it's going to go bad, that is put into consideration. But a lot of things, there's more strictness that you call out, that you try to see if you can find the owner, and then a year later it's yours. In most areas, that's not quite the case. I found a few things, and I asked the nearby church, and some other stuff, and after a year, then it was mine. It turned out not to be worth hardly anything. It was costume jewelry, but it could have been something. And another time, I found a diamond earring, and it was claimed within a week of that. As far as the state, it was mine months prior. But as far as God's law, you can, the fact it was claimed within a week of it being a year after finding it, then, Now, this book doesn't distinguish in some respects between what else people did. Now, somebody who apostatizes, anything that was excused because of their conversion, that comes back. Anybody who fights the Muslimin or anything like that, again, they're dealt with according to that, not the apostasy. They're just not considered a Muslim anymore. Okay. So there are some things that one thinks. And if you think about the issue of correcting people, and generally you can do that privately. Now, if people wrong you and there's, you think that can be dealt with publicly, somebody cheated you financially or hurt you physically or something like that, that may have to be addressed publicly. But you try to get some of that addressed privately. Now, the physical hurt or stealing or something could be so severe that that's not possible. But in Islam, morals are the focus. Although you want to maintain a good reputation ethically. And the distinguishment of the major and the minor commandments comes off a little bit different than the Bible. Certainly, the sins of misassociation are as bad as it gets. But, again, it's not for humans to penalize that. But drawing a picture, it's not allowed in Islam, but it's not considered one of the major sins. Everything that's the major sins, but you don't want to have the minor sins add up either. And when it comes to good, well, the intention you have, the consciousness, the mercy of God, more than anything else, can multiply your deeds. The circumstances of the deeds, too. But your bad deeds don't, they kind of stay what they are. So woe to those who let their singles outdo their multiples. Some hadith to that effect. Forgiveness and patience are essential things to work on. One of the things about patience is not that you just excuse people and the people that are making you wait for no good reason, that you should always just, they're going to make me wait. They always make, but sometimes they may not. So Like, for example, those people will make people late even to the Juma and the Eid services. Um, you got to be on that. Just like, okay, well, if every other Eid you're going to be on time, every other Juma, well, because you're on it. But if you're not on it, then it's going to be like, oh, well, maybe one Juma a month and one Eid a year, you're going to be on time. But you might be on time for both Eids and a couple Jumas a month if you don't say anything. And some people, again, if you're not on it, that we got to go, just grab your stuff and let's go. You may never be on time. And just like the thing about blasphemy, apostasy, and disbelief, the fighting too, we need to look at the whole story of what's going on. How the story, and not just, oh, well, they were disbelievers, weren't they? Or they were led by a woman, or some silly thing like that people will claim that don't know anything about Islam, trying to talk about stuff against Islam. So we need to look at stuff. If we look at somebody's narration of what their ruling was later, the jurisprudence. Well, what does the Quran say? What does the Hadith say? And not only can we make the decision if their narration is, if their case is something that we can follow along with, but we figure out how to implement it more fully in our time. We are people between full indulgence and full abstinence. We are between in a lot of things. We're working on ourselves, a sense of contentment, a sense of hope and effort towards what is right more than anything else, towards a purpose that is beyond ourselves, but not just, we're not really capitalist, we're not really communist, we're not really socialist or fascist or anything else. There's aspects of some of these things, but we're beyond the politics. We're beyond the certain economic modes. We can look to the sciences that Islam encourages in all of us. We can look at the science of the passing on of Islamic tradition. We can look at the various literal and figurative imports of the revealed verses, of the inspired teachings. We can work out this great tapestry of life. It is for us to develop in a way remembering that everything counts.